Okay, let's finally get into our questions. All right, so we are back with some quick math. Um, we are going to solve the question that's above, simplify the following. So we are doing our reductions. We have our Cartesian plane up there for us already. So let's start solving some of these. So let's look at the first thing that we see over there. We see cos 180 degrees minus theta. So we need to reduce that, right? So that's going to be to an acute angle. So the first thing that we're going to do, so let's go with some steps. The first step is to look inside your bracket. So we look inside that bracket. So we're only looking at this part, the 180 degrees minus theta. And then you ask yourself, okay, which quadrant is 180 minus theta? Okay, so we discussed this in one of our previous videos. 180 minus puts us over here. This is our second quadrant, and we know sine is positive there. Let's add cos t, a, S, and T. So 180 minus puts us in our second quadrant over here. So the first thing we do, we look inside our bracket. We see which quadrant does this put me in. For this question, 180 minus, we are in our second quadrant. Second step, right? So second thing that you are going to look at, you are going to look at the function that we have. Okay, you are going to look at the function that we have, and in this case the function we have is cos. Okay, so now you ask yourself, we already know we're in the second quadrant, 180 minus, we know we're in the second quadrant. We ask ourselves, cos, is cos positive or negative in that quadrant? And because cos is negative in our second quadrant, that first part of the question reduces to minus, still cos, stays cos, minus cos of our acute angle, which in this case is theta. Okay, let's look at the second part of that question over there. So we dealt with the first part. Now let's deal with this part over here. Again, we're going to start inside our bracket. So what we have inside the bracket is the 90 minus. Okay, so 90 minus is going to put us in our first quadrant over here. This is where we are, 90 minus. First thing, which quadrant you are in. The second thing, okay, your function. So in this case, we have cos. So is cos positive or negative in the quadrant which we are in? For us, that is going to be positive. All right. One more thing, because we're dealing with 90, and this is important, right? Once you see that you are dealing with 90, we are going to change between our co-functions. Which are our co-functions? Our co-functions are sine and cos. So because we're dealing with 90, we are changing between our co-functions. No longer do we have cos, we will have sine. So we'll have sine of our acute angle. Okay, let's just go over that again quickly. The first thing we did was to consider which bracket we are, or which quadrant we are in. We looked inside our bracket, and our bracket told us 180 minus second quadrant, or 90 minus first quadrant. So the first thing we did was looked inside the bracket. The second thing we did, we looked at what function we have. So if you have cos, you say, okay, is cos positive in the quadrant that I'm in? And for us, when we were in our second quadrant, cos was negative there, so we had a negative value. Right. For the second part of that, we looked at cos 90 degrees minus theta, 90 minus, we said that was our first quadrant. So cos in that quadrant is going to be positive, so it's going to stay positive. However, now we are dealing with 90, and because we are dealing with 90, we said we change between our co-functions, so it's going to change from cos to sine, and that's why we have that. Okay, let's look at the denominator. So what we have at the bottom over here, first we start inside our bracket. So inside our bracket we have 90 plus. So we ask ourselves, 90 plus, which quadrant am I in? 90 plus is going to put me over here in my second quadrant. Then I ask myself, okay, the function that I have, which function do I have? I have sine. Is sine, so this is my sine here, is sine positive or negative in that quadrant? Sine is positive in that quadrant, so my answer stays positive. However, we have a 90, and because we have the 90, we know that we swap between our co-functions. So we're going to have positive sine of our acute angle theta. We're going to stop this video here. In our next video, we're going to talk about a negative angle so that we can actually complete this question.